Welcome everyone to the Sustainability Marketing from Greenwash Risk to Value Creation. It's really great to have you guys all here today. We've got a really interesting lineup. We've got very seasoned sustainability practitioners. But before we get into that, I would like to just share with you the who is bringing this webinar to you. So maybe Ange, can you go to the next slide and the slide after that as well? And it's like, yes, so AMS is the presenter of this webinar. It's the voice of the advertising and marketing industry. We've been around since 2019, which was actually a merge between the 4As, which is the Association of Accredited Advertising Agents Singapore, formed in 1948, and IAS, which is the Institute of Advertising Singapore, formed in 1990. We've got many awards that award shows that we run, which help support and recognize talent and achievement for industry practitioners, such as GONG, which is the Creative Circle Award, Singapore Media Marketing Awards, Effie Awards, which is the International Award Show, and also the Crowbar Awards to recognize student talent. And we've got training programs which we'll be launching, which is the reason why we're all here. The training program that we'll be launching first will be on sustainability. And today's session, as you know, it's a sneak preview for the upcoming 25, 26 of November, Sustainable Marketing, Doing It Right. So I would like to move on to the next slide and to just share a little bit more about the webinar, the upcoming course. So this course is actually a collaboration between AAMS and WSG. So the training dates, as I shared earlier, and the venue will be at One Farrer Hotel. So it's a wonderful venue. Topics are actually very, very relevant as well. But I will not let the cat out of the bag right now. I'll let Andy and Laura share a little bit more about what they have in store for you guys. The two speakers we have, who are also the trainers for the program, Andy Wilson, founder of Early Majority, and Laura Cantor, founder of Climate Club. And I would not take the opportunity for them to share. So maybe Andy and Laura, over to you guys.
That's great, Nick. It's great to see everybody. Thank you so much for giving up your time this busy Wednesday morning to join us on this webinar and to find out more about this course, Sustainability Marketing, Getting It Right, Doing It Right. What we'll do is we're just going to spend 20 or so minutes giving you an introduction first to ourselves and then into some of the themes and topics of the course. So I'll just introduce myself a little bit about my background. As you can see from the slide, my background, I've been living in Asia for nearly 25 years now. And my background has been on the agency side, brand agency, marketing agency, advertising agency. And my background, as you can imagine, was really helping clients drive growth across Asia. And that was been an incredibly exciting journey over the last few decades, as you can imagine, as the tide of Asia, incomes and middle class has grown, so have all these categories and brands. But it was a few years ago that I certainly realized that the growth that we're trying to achieve across the board is not going to last forever. And that this upcoming kind of crunch of sustainability is an incredibly important mega trend that we've all got to understand and integrate from a business and brand perspective. Because whether it's because of regulations or just a slowdown in supply chain or consumer demand, if we don't get this right, we're going to have very severe headwinds to sustain our own growth trajectories. So that's really my background. And I then had the fortune to head up the sustainability practice for Ogilvy Asia for a couple of years. And then I've set up by myself because I pretty soon realized that to really deliver positive impact, one has to go deeper than communications and really help organizations understand their overall context and therefore how marketing can help. So that is my background. Laura, can you share a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. So to reiterate Andy's enthusiasm, I'm also really excited to be here and to be a facilitator for this course. So as mentioned, I've spent the last 13 years working in APAC, experience similar to Andy at agency side, but also working in startups all the way to large global multinationals. And as cliche as it sounds, I think since I started work, I've always wanted to kind of add more value and drive purpose in my day-to-day roles and find ways to implement sustainability. And at Food Panda, as the marketing and sustainability director, I had the amazing opportunity to actually make a difference and not only influence the organization, but to set the benchmark for sustainability in the region across e-commerce platforms. But it wasn't all, positive. I think during this time, I realized as well that even the most effective and impactful ideas, and the ones to me that were so obvious, could take months and months of deliberation and buy-in from senior stakeholders who could just be so risk averse and short-sighted and not really understand that value of sustainability. And that's actually what led me to set up my own company, Climate Club. And our goal is to help organizations of all sizes to develop and implement sustainability strategies that are not only positive for the planet and people, but actually positive for the bottom line. So now I'll hand over to Andy on the next slide to take you over more things to do with the course.
That's great, Laura. So hopefully you can pick up the fact that we've got a huge amount of not only huge enthusiasm for this topic, but also a fair amount of experience from across the spectrum of how, in fact, sustainability and marketing kind of come together and forge together. And that's really why we're so excited that the AMS have put on this course, because as marketers, it really is time and a great opportunity for us all to really understand and master how sustainability is going to really impact and the opportunities for marketing as a discipline and for ourselves and our organization. So first of all, let's just land this really important point why it's so important, because that systemic change is happening already across the region, across Singapore, and across all of our organizations. And that systemic change we call sustainability, which is made up of lots of different kind of factors. Many of us see this kind of unfolding with climate change imagery, biodiversity loss. We've all seen the really sad images of deforestation, extreme weather events, and whilst we're all hit emotionally, it can seem quite far off. But the reality is that this is already really impacting our economy in Singapore and also business and marketing of all of our organizations. It's estimated that in Singapore alone, the costs to manage this issue may be up to 250 billion Singapore dollars. And that will be borne by government, by business in the forms of increased carbon tax, which is coming our way, increased supply costs, insurance costs, etc. So there is a huge challenge for how we're going to migrate into this new world and manage those costs. And that obviously requires us to tap into opportunity to offset those costs. And there is huge upside, insofar as we're moving into this new economy. Huge upshifts and opportunities in renewable energy, in green technology, recycling infrastructure, sustainable agriculture, you name it. And the government, we're very blessed in Singapore because the government is leading the way by offering billions of dollars of subsidies, incentives, and development funds to help us all really kind of master and transition this way. And that's not to forget that consumers and customers, they're incredibly aware and quite frankly impatient for the private sector to bring us solutions to help them buy more sustainable solutions, whether that's a packaging improvement or something that is less carbon intensive, or maybe a new business, a new business model like recycling business models. Now, consumers and customers, they're not going to compromise on quality or affordability or convenience. So it's up to us in the private sector really to come and provide them with those solutions. And that's really the essence of value creation here. So in a sense, sustainability is going to be a really important central part of our toolkit, much in the same way that everyone's talking about AI, and we've got to embrace that as a key part of our toolkit. Sustainability is arguably really more important because it's frankly quite existential. And the better that all of us marketers can understand these factors and integrate them into our business models, into our marketing plans, into our innovation strategies, the more we're going to be able to help our businesses and organizations navigate this transition. So that's why we think sustainability is so central to the marketing function moving forward. On the next slide, please.
As marketers, we have the potential to be the agents of positive change, and I truly believe this to be the case. I think I've been able to live and breathe this myself. And then sometimes it might not feel like this in your day-to-day role when you're kind of bogged down in budgets and back-to-back meetings and multiple rounds of approvals. But marketing traditionally, we are the voice of the customer, and I would say the most human element in any organization. And with that, there's huge potential to be able to use these insights and this sort of closeness to the customer to drive additional business value through innovation and product development. And as Andy shared, the kind of the topics that sustainability is trying to solve and tackle are huge, complex issues. And we need to be creative in order to find these solutions. And we're better to solve these where in the most probably creative departments in organizations, which is marketing. So I really argue, we shouldn't be sticking too closely to our job descriptions as marketers and wait for permission or the green light from our CEOs to suddenly talk about or incorporate sustainability within our day-to-day strategy. We have the potential to do this right now. I would argue any organization, any marketer can do this, just like I did at Food Panda. And communication, and why is that important? I mean, it's all about sharing information with emotion, and with a good communication strategy, you can actually invoke emotion and, most importantly, drive action. You can incentivize people to make changes, whether that's saving billions of sets of cutlery or reducing less meat. We have that opportunity to do that in our roles. As Andy shared, we're on this threshold of seismic change, and our role is just going to be bigger than ever before. So we need to think about marketing not only in this traditional sense of selling and influencing customers, but also how we can sell ideas and influence our bosses, our peers, stakeholders that we deal with internally, not just externally. So Andy can take us through a little bit more detail about the agenda on the next slide.
Great, thanks, Laura. So yes, some of the themes that we're going to be kind of introducing you to and giving you kind of frameworks and tools and case studies to help kind of master. The overall premise is that we want to give you the tools and techniques so you can manage the very near-term risks that are often associated with sustainability, the fabled greenwashing, and its probably more pernicious cousin green hushing. And so we want to, overall, that will be one of the end goals, that you'll, leave the course with the tools and the context and the confidence, frankly, to really generate a communications plan that is totally free of any of those risks. But we want to go beyond that and beyond your role as just a kind of narrow tactical communications driver, to really give you some of the frameworks for how you can actually grow and build value for the organization. So here are some of the themes that we'll arm you with as you leave the course. The first of all is we want to really kind of give you the tools to open the context of your role as a marketer in your organization. Now, everybody's going to come to this course with different backgrounds and assumptions of how sustainability is being integrated in their organization into the marketing. And so we're going to give people a kind of a foundation for what are the really critical issues in sustainability and the definitions that you need to understand to really be kind of confident to understand the issues. And then really give you a sense of how your organization may or may not be addressing those general issues, because we see marketing as a servant of the overall organizational strategy. Now, organizations, it's been quite straightforward to date because we've been helping organizations do what they want, which is grow. And now sustainability is going to make that path to growth more challenging, and certainly apply some conditions to it, either with certain requirements or regulations such as kind of emissions or what have you. So it's going to be really critical for you to understand how the marketing function should operate in that broader context. And we've got a great framework that I've developed with the ESG Institute that will help you identify and understand where your organization sits on this journey, and therefore how you as a marketer can help them with that transition. So that's the first point, is really understand and support your organization's sustainability mission. The second is to give you some tools to help you think broader than probably what we're expert in now, which is having a really good focus on consumers and customers. As Laura said, with the new world of a sustainability-enabled future, we're going to have to understand that it's not only about those stakeholders. We have to think of a broader set of stakeholders. And as marketers, we have every right and every capability to affect change with those stakeholders as required. I'll give you an example. Talent. Anyone who's in the position of hiring for the future will be well aware that there is an incredible shortage of highly qualified talent across the board. And actually, there's a big war on talent coming on, and the talent will have all the choice in the world for which employer they want to go to, either as graduates or early on in their career, or either perhaps choose not to go to an employer and to start up on their own. And therefore, your corporation, your organization's brand as an employer, your ability to attract talent is going to be really important. And the role of sustainability and your appeal to that talent is going to be absolutely critical. Survey after survey reminds us that they really care that an organization has got a plan and got a track record and ideally a kind of positive impact to really help motivate and inspire them to join you and apply their talents to your organization's efforts. So that's just one example of how understanding the different stakeholders and understanding their agendas will help you adopt a stakeholder mentality when it comes to your stakeholders. And the third point is really building value against those stakeholders. Once we understand the different stakeholders that matter, we can then define the different ways in which marketing can build value for the organization, whether that's for the corporate brand or whether as the organization's employer brand or, of course, customer or consumer value as well, through creating more sustainable propositions. So we got to make sure that we kind of can integrate the issues of sustainability that's right for our organization and right for the stakeholder, that does not compromise on those current critical aspects of quality, category performance, affordability, etc. So in our view, that's the fundamental challenge. And we'll be giving you a lot of frameworks and case studies to really help you grapple and understand and master that. So you can go back to your companies and say, hold on, now with this course, I've now got a plan so I can add more value to your organization.
Thanks, Andy. So I guess, there's a big piece of work there around aligning your marketing agenda with the organization's sustainability mission. And this is really critical for it to actually success and have that momentum that it needs to succeed. But then you need to communicate this, and that's critical. And we want to share with you how to communicate your stories with confidence. And I think the key word here is confidence. We want you to go away after these 2 days and feel, confident to put these strategies into place. We're going to help you avoid greenwashing. We know that organizations here in Singapore are petrified of greenwashing, but actually it's not unique to Singapore. We see this all over the world. Organizations, one of the biggest barriers they have to working on sustainability is the fear of being scrutinized and being accused of greenwashing. But on the flip side, we also have something which is kind of relatively new phenomena, greenwashing. A latest South Pole study saw that in Singapore, around 40% of organizations actually greenwash. They don't even talk about sustainability because they're so scared of, these sort of keyboard warriors, accusing them of greenwashing as well. And that's also really dangerous. We don't want organizations to greenwash, absolutely not. But equally, we don't want companies to not even talk about sustainability, because for this to succeed, for this whole kind of movement and industry to sort of enact change, we need to talk about it more. We need to build a momentum. We need to set those benchmarks so competitors kind of follow suit when we, whether change our packaging or we make these sort of brave, bold moves. And we know, and I think equally not talking about sustainability doesn't prioritize it within the organization itself. So there's so many reasons why communicating this is so important, both internally and externally. And finally, we're going to help you implement a plan. that builds alliances, momentum, and success. And this implementation for us is so critical. And when Andy and I first talked about facilitating this course, it was really important that it wasn't just, a theory. We didn't want to just be talking for 2 days and then, you go away and you've learned something new. We want to give you this theory and the foundation that you can be confident going away and implementing this and executing this. Because for us, success of this course, it isn't just about, having, 30 people in a room, but it's actually knowing in 6 months, you're going to go away, you're going to take some aspects of this course and actually implement these in your organizations and drive real impact and real change. And that's why we're both so excited about teaching this course next month. So if you can go to the next slide, I think Andy will just kind of give a bit of a summary of what we've discussed.
Yes, in terms of how it's going to happen, it's going to be 2 days of high energy, high interactivity. And as Laura said, we really want to make this practical. There's a fair amount of theory to get through, to some fundamentals that we need to land, and you need to feel kind of confident that you've got those. And we'll be providing kind of how-to frameworks to help you make sense and apply some of those foundations to your organizations. We're going to be providing case studies. It's so cool that Laura is able to join us because she's a living case study of what she achieved at Food Panda, successes, near successes, etc., and learnings, of course. We're going to be building in plenty of time for group discussion. This is so important because people are going to come at this from different sectors, different organizational or sustainability kind of understanding levels, and obviously different kind of roles of marketing. So it's very important that we give enough time so all the attendees can kind of ask the right questions. We can have a discussion so they can kind of adopt and internalize some of the implications. As Laura said, we will be providing an implementation guide. This is the most practical way we can see that you can go back to your organization and drive value to that organization straight away. It will be practical. It will be obviously bespoke to your situation and your objectives and goals. And we'll be building in time during the course for you to kind of reflect, complete this, ask questions, etc. So we really want to kind of arm you with action when you go back to your organizations. That's it from us for now. We'd love to kind of, thanks again for your attention, and thanks again to the AMS to lay on this opportunity for us all. And we'd be delighted to field any questions about the course and about some of the themes we've already raised.
So again, thank you so much, Andy and Laura, for the wealth of information, even though it's a short session, but it's so helpful for those listening in. But before we get into the fireside chat segment, I just want to encourage those listening in and participating in today's session to just take note that there is a 2-day course, a 2-day program, which is the Sustainable Marketing Doing It Right, which Andy mentioned earlier in terms of what the course outline will be. And this is the AAMS and WSG initiative. So please scan the QR code and register your interest today. If you're not sure, still scan the QR code, register online. We'll be in touch with you to see how you can actually be part of this program. So we do look forward to your registration as soon as possible. So again, thank you so much for doing the registration. So now let's go over to the next segment, which is the fireside chat. So and we have still Andy and Laura. So thank you for staying on. I think one of the things that I wanted to ask about is that because both of you shared a lot of information, right, on sustainability. And the thing is that I'm sure that even though you did share a bit about yourselves much earlier, but would you like to just take a few moments to just dive in on one area of your experience that you find most pressing or most memorable that you want to share in your practice of sustainability marketing? Maybe Andy, you would like to begin?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So I'll give you one example it's for a client that's still ongoing, so I can't give too much away. But one of the wonderful opportunities that this space has, it gives us access to really exciting new technologies and new businesses. It's going on all around, and we know that Singapore is incubating quite a few of this in climate tech, sustainable agriculture, etc. And I've been privileged enough to work for an organization that is sitting on some really exciting food technology. It is essentially replicating dairy identical protein, but without using a cow, right? It's called precision fermentation. And it's got massive sustainability advantages. We all know how much methane and carbon and land use cows take.
Exactly.
And therefore, if you're making identical protein without the fields and without the cow burps and farts, you've got massive reduction of your carbon footprint and your land use. So it's really exciting from a sustainability perspective. But here's the challenge. People, and you can imagine this is going into dairy categories or into food category, anywhere where you have protein is going there. At the moment, end consumers and the customers creating these food products, they're not that engaged with sustainability. Honestly speaking, when you ask about them spontaneously, they'll say, yeah, of course we want it less. But when you're in the aisle and you're choosing something that's great tasting or something that's more sustainable, they're going to choose something that's great tasting that their family would like, etc. And so what we've been doing is a huge amount of work actually helping them reframe their whole story about this protein in a way that fits category needs and category performance. And that obviously varies whether you're talking about a yogurt or a protein bar or a protein drink. There are huge differences in what those category drivers are, and working with the product teams to really understand what the most compelling value proposition is the key thing. So the end result is they've got this wonderful kind of product that now not only drives that great sustainability issues, and some people will love that and find that really interesting and exciting, but moreover, it delivers on those core category drivers. And that is going to be the key to their success.
In fact, Andy, I'm just going to touch on one point that you mentioned. It's about the value proposition. And I think no matter what a company would do or a marketer would do, value proposition is still going to be really, really, really important. So back down to the core fundamentals of marketing, right? Sustainability marketing is still marketing, period.
That's right. And I think that's what this course is going to be so good, because at the moment, a lot of organizations, the sustainability agenda and the marketing agenda may be kind of disparate or running in parallel, not so connected. And now is the time that we need to connect these two. For marketers to really take an interest in the sustainability issues and compliance, and by understanding that, really help the organization embrace it and drive that value. I was talking about it through those value propositions as an example.
Exactly. And I think that the uninitiated will be caught between all the technicalities of compliance and all that, and they get lost in that whole rabbit hole of all the different types of compliance requirements, right? And then forget about the whole notion that they need to still practice marketing.
Correct. Absolutely right.
Actually, on that note, maybe I'd like to ask Laura, what about your memorable moment when you're at Food Panda? And I think, because you come from the client side or the brand side, right? So it'd be quite interesting to hear from you. So Laura, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, there's quite a few. I think I was quite lucky at Food Panda. I think 6 years in a startup can sometimes feel like a lifetime. So I think we have quite a lot of examples of sort of, as Andy mentioned, like successes and also learnings as well that I can share in the course. One of my proudest achievements is definitely the cutlery toggle. So I think now all delivery apps in the world, I guess, but especially in the region, have the kind of cutlery yes/no toggle. And it's a great example of sort of innovation, a very simple innovation. It took me a long time to get it pushed through. We had a development team based in Berlin, different time zone, that I was sort of heckling on I would say daily basis to kind of get this project underway. And again, it was a great learning of sort of how do you influence people? How can you measure the success? How can you kind of motivate people to keep, implementation of this tool? But I think one of the interesting factors is when I launched, I think I made the mistake of thinking everyone would toggle off. Surely everyone's going to, we had insight, 85% of people were ordering at home or at work, even higher actually, most of the time. And why would they need cutlery? But obviously it's convenient. They don't want to wash it up. So people were still asking for cutlery, like 80% of people were still asking. And so then there was a huge piece of work that we did, behavior change campaigns, to shift them from 80% opt-in to kind of 90-something% opt-out, and we were able to do that in the space of 12 months Also working with restaurant partners, because again, we saw even when people were saying they didn't want cutlery, they were still putting it in. It was just like autopilot, they were just throwing the cutlery in all of the bags. And there was also a big piece of work we did with our restaurant partners to educate them and influence them to say, hey, look, there's benefits to you not giving out cutlery. You can save money. You can also look at your sustainability strategy. So that's definitely one of my proudest achievements. I think my last year at Food Panda, 2022, we launched this across all regions, and we estimated we'd saved just Food Panda 1 billion sets of cutlery. So
Wow.
that's, incredible. And again, you're talking then Grab followed, Uber Eats followed in the markets that they're in, Deliveroo. So, you're talking impact of billions of cutlery. Yeah. So that's kind of one of my highlights, I would say, in the role.
I think that's a wonderful highlight. I mean, like, so you'll be known as the cutlery yes no person.
Yeah.
Actually, this is and to just touch on a point you mentioned earlier about how when when you had the yes no option and you thought people would actually click on no, we don't want cutlery, right? But actually you had to educate them. And I think also Andy, you mentioned about how when people go to the aisle, the shopping aisle, they also need to be primed to actually know that there's a sustainable option, right? So do you find that to be a real problem, like that when it comes to getting the consumer, the individual at the end of the food chain, so to speak, that they need to be primed or they need to be nudged to do the activity?
Yes, it's a complex question. It's a great question, and there's no single answer in my view. That I've worked with some clients who've not even thought it was necessary to let the customer or the end consumer even know, because it was just the right thing to do. There was no real change
Right.
to the end performance, and just do it, right. And so I've worked with a lot of clients who've just done that. There are then other opportunities where you think, well, yes, maybe it is, and then how do you represent that? And again, you want to do it in a way that doesn't alienate or confuse. And therefore, there's obviously, as we all know, there's a lot of kind of labeling and design kind of issues to help consumers understand either explicitly or implicitly that there is something beneficial to the environment or to the communities of a certain product. There's a huge undertaking in terms of kind of information transparency, etc. We do know that those engaged with the issue will often spend a little bit more time inspecting a pack or going online to figure it out, or talking to them online to figure out what the best options are. So I think so long as we adopt kind of information transparency and we communicate it, as Laura said, in a lovely way, confidently and appropriately, then they'll find out in due course. Right. And over time, we're really going to see the consumer demands accelerate this transition through this shift.
Right. So I think it's what you're saying as well, and if I understand correctly, that traditional forms of or understanding of marketing still kicks in anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
I think,
sorry,
yeah,
Laura, go ahead, please. Yes.
Just to add, I guess, yeah, it's not, I suppose it's even understanding of people, and that's sort of what marketing is all about. And there's actually quite an interesting part of the course that Andy and I have come up with, or Andy has got a beautiful drawing, which is a bit of a carrot and stick approach. And that's sort of what I followed at Food Panda. It's kind of, you either incentivize, the way that Food Panda is like, you incentivize with vouchers, or you kind of, maybe give some sort of cost transparency or cost sort of savings as well to brands to work on. And that's what we did with the cutlery. It was like, actually, okay, Laura, fantastic, amazing, makes you feel really good. Like, wow, you've saved this many sets of cutlery in, the last 6 months. To restaurants, it was the same. Wow, look, your customers have saved, some of them it's 6 figures, 5-6 figures of worth of savings that you've been able to do. So I think it's, sometimes it doesn't have to be, some of the solutions can be quite simple as well. And that's kind of what we'll share in the course. It's sort of, you don't have to worry too much. Probably the answers you already have. It's just, how do you get better at kind of finding them? What are these sort of investigative tools you can use that we'll share with you, that you can actually figure out some of these ways of motivating people? Because again, you are usually your customer, or you are a person, and what motivates you. And a lot of the time it's quite selfish reasons, and I think it's okay to kind of play to those if the end goal is positive. If we're able to make people make these great shifts, then let's really talk to those sort of aspects of their personality that will get them to make those changes.
You know, Laura, you mentioned about I think early on about how there were small companies that you actually helped, as well as big companies as well. Would there be something that you want to share with those listening in, especially those coming from a small company setup, right? What are the things that you would at least advise them from a marketing perspective that they should do first?
You first. I mean, I guess, small companies, most small organizations, although it looks like kind of even the largest ones, I think typically what I see is sustainability isn't prioritized for kind of a variety of reasons. But usually it's cost related, right? They don't have the money to invest or the resources to invest. So it's kind of deprioritized. And I think if you want it to succeed, it's sort of what Andy talked about earlier and what we're going to cover off in sort of the first part of the course. You need to align your like business strategy or business mission with your marketing agenda, and so you're not kind of in conflict. Because I think where I've seen these initiatives not come into fruition is because it feels like you're not in line with the business strategy. So first we're going to show, and it's hard, to be honest, this is a big piece of work and we're really going to scratch the surface in the course. It's like, how can you align your business strategy with your marketing strategy so you're not in conflict, you're not swimming against the tide, but you're really kind of with the momentum of the organization. So everyone is buying into this agenda and this mission. So I think that's key, and that's most important. I think the other aspect of success, at least what in my experience that I found, is kind of how do you measure and how do you influence your stakeholders? Because a lot of the biggest piece of work sometimes is getting, even if it's a small organization, typically the CEO is the founder, and they're kind of more, everything's a lot more personally connected to them. So how can you influence them? And again, that influence might be different. It could be, again, money related, but there could be other motivations. So it's also kind of figuring out your stakeholders. And again, Andy's got a really fantastic framework that we'll share. And I think he worked on, for many years on this. It's kind of figuring out your stakeholders, understanding where you are at an organizational level, and then what are those nudges to actually influence them as well.
Laura, I think you made an interesting point there about how, it's about the psychology of people, right? And about how it's about nudging people to do the right behavior. And I think also you mentioned Andy had some examples that possibly you'd like to share. And on that note, Andy, I'd like to invite you to share some examples that probably you would like to interest or inspire people listening in.
Okay, there's one that I'm working on right now, and again, it's important to shift our mindset of sustainability from away from only carbon and plastic, which are really critical, probably high priority ones, to more community orientation, and again, understanding how the value chain and your suppliers can be a part of all this consideration. So we actually think of suppliers as a key stakeholder as well. And again, I haven't been doing a lot in the food space at this stage. There's a growing kind of interest that we've got, particularly in the connoisseurship, where people really want to know where their chocolate or their coffee is coming from, and that the health of that community is being protected and nurtured by doing business. So there's a lot of fair trade initiatives going on. And again, it's about, in my view, aligning that it's not just a nice to have to know that I'm drinking a coffee and I know, and there's a project I'm working on, I know and I can see, and I've got some form of understanding that the coffee growers are being protected by doing business with this company, and their lives and their futures are in good shape. That's great, but that feels like a bit of a CSR thing, a feel-good thing. What I'm curious about is helping people understand how that connects and links up to a better quality end product. And again, you can build in all sorts of kind of premium values of craftsmanship and love, care, and attention. We see it in some of the areas of wineries and so on and so forth. So really understanding, the work I'm doing now is understanding the farmers and the supply chain, and understanding, working on how the company that's essentially buying from them to give this coffee to the end consumer can really generate a shared purpose And frankly, the shared purpose is good coffee for decades to come, because coffee, good affordable coffee for decades to come, because coffee is going to be under so much strain and pressure from environmental factors. We don't even know what's going to hit us in terms of the price of coffee coming up. So it's in everyone's interest that we protect the coffee supply chain, but it's got to come from the stakeholder with perhaps the most vulnerability across the whole value chain, and that's the farmers who are actually making the coffee grow and happen.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Andy. And I think before we carry on, I'd just like to make an announcement to those listening in, those who are in attendance, that if you've got a question to ask, please feel free to just key in your question in the Q&A portion, and then we'll answer that in a short while. So moving on just to one more question, then we'll answer some questions from the Q&A. And that's the area of sustainability reporting. And I think we talked about this before the session, right, Andy and Laura? And I think as everyone would more or less know, back in February 28th of February this year, CNA reported that by 2025, sustainability reporting will be mandatory for some SGX firms, right? So this was because of an announcement by Minister for Transport and Second Minister for Finance, Chee Hon Tat. So how would this impact marketers, right? Especially companies in these listed firms with upstream and downstream supply chains.
Shall I give that a go? I'll kick off, and Laura, please add on to anything. It's going to be a big change. I think organizations now will obviously have to focus, and they are already focus on what's broadly called kind of disclosure and compliance. And we all know that these larger organizations are trying to hire either internal people, sustainability officers, or consultants to help them measure, disclose, and comply with these regulations. And it is important, and it will no doubt bring a kind of a little wave of cost through the system. And that's a problem if you look at it at face value. However, what it will do, the net result of this is it will place sustainability quite centrally in an organization's kind of mindset, because you are, of course, you manage what you measure. And by being encouraged to report on this, then there's a great opportunity now for organizations really to embrace and embark on what their sustainability kind of strategy will be. What are their pledges? What are their commitments? And more importantly, how are they going to get there?
Right.
So that's really important. And even at that level, a marketer who's embracing kind of corporate reputation or has got a seat on the leadership board can play a huge role in terms of helping the organization internally kind of understand and articulate and get excited by that new kind of agenda. And the critical thing there that we'll be landing in the course is that sustainability ambition ideally should be done and articulated in a way that is not only compelling, but aligned to the business. You don't want it kind of sitting out to one side, because as Laura was saying, that just becomes a burden. But if it's aligned to the core mission of the business, then you can fully integrate why sustainability is so critical and powerful to the future success of the business. So that's the first part. I think the second part of it is that once you're starting to embark on sustainability measurement, then what's going to happen is going to unlock what I call scope 3 considerations. And this will be coming in over the next horizon of regulations that, there's a carbon issue. Everyone's kind of carbon footprint carries through the system. So my supplier's carbon footprint and the numbers that they're reporting are now on my ledger, as it were. And so that will open up lots of conversations with procurement and customer, particularly with the B2B sector, where marketing can play a role, because everyone's going to want to know from their suppliers and then onto their own customers that their footprint is under management, it's going the right place, it's again helping drive the core value proposition. And so then before we know it, sustainability is part of our central kind of value proposition that is going to be of interest to customers. So those are two immediate kind of takeaways that I can see happening.
Andy, thanks for sharing. And I think before I ask Laura to just add on to that, you mentioned about scope 3. Right. I think maybe for the attendees listening in, would you like to just explain a bit more about or define scope 3 for them?
Yes, sure thing. So scope 3 is I think is a game changer. It's a way that we can kind of conceptualize our emissions footprint, because emissions aren't owned. They're not like kind of furniture and stuff and factories that own in a location. And so there are three ways to measure your emissions. Your scope one are your what's called direct emissions that you're responsible for from the assets that you own and manage, your factories, your offices, your executives going on business class, etc. So that's scope one. Now that's within your direct control. So you can obviously more easily impact a reduction plan for all of that. Scope two is a special definition around your energy usage. So that will, again, by understanding that will encourage you to choose an make energy supply decisions that will hopefully reduce your scope two. And scope three are those kind of further afield indirect emissions that are accrued by your suppliers and also your logistics companies, etc. So if you're a footwear manufacturer, and you outsource your manufacturing to a company in Bangladesh or what have you, their performance on emissions now becomes transparently on the ledger of the footwear manufacturer. So it's your problem now to negotiate and drive and to report, so on and so forth. So it's I think a wonderful drive for transparency, to make sure that the profit, the people generating profit, now incorporate these external factors and take responsibility for reducing them in the long run.
Awesome. Thanks so much for clarifying, Andy. Laura, would you like to add as well? I mean, to the earlier question that Andy answered.
Yeah, I think Andy's covered sort of kind of most of what I wanted to say, but I guess I think what's important when it comes to reporting, because obviously I like to look at reporting not as a sort of end goal or the destination, but kind of the journey that you're going on to build your sustainability strategy. Because I also sort of observed with many organizations that it's great, they kind of get on the first step of reporting, and I think that's also why the government is introducing these sort of regulations. You're kind of bringing everyone onto this journey and getting them across and to identify the importance of sustainability and reporting, but it shouldn't be the end goal. I think once you have that information, the question is, what do you do with that information? So what are the solutions you can come up with based on the information that you have? What are the improvements you can make, the innovations, whether it's from a product standpoint, a supplier standpoint, services that you're offering. So I guess for me, what's exciting is getting that report, and then what do you do with that information, and what can you improve, and how can you improve your sustainability strategy based on the information you have there?
Great, thanks for sharing, Laura. I think early on we had a discussion as well that I think, Andy, you made a point that the sustainability report will be a product of the company's credentials in terms of sustainability, and that product can actually be used for marketing purposes as well.
That's right, and maybe I'll just respond and answer one of the great questions already posted, which the question is: would a sustainability officer lead the communications, or would he or she defer to the marketing team? Right. And it's a really good question. I mean, the answer is, frankly, it depends on how the organization is set up, but ultimately it's going to be a joint collaboration. Typically, the sustainability officer is the person, if you've got one, charged with the reporting and ultimately this report. Quite often, it's driven to the investors, and it's there left kind of as a piece of great work, but not doing perhaps enough kind of good work for the overall organizations, for the stakeholders. Many employees won't even know about it, the partners won't know about it, etc. So this is where marketing and the skills of a marketer can really come into play. I often think of the analogy of a sustainability report a bit like a kind of product, and how marketers work with product managers. The product managers own the product. They have all the technical nous and lots of quality control over the actual product. But the marketer, by understanding that and through a good collaboration, can really understand the value of that product as it relates to those different stakeholders. And by doing that, you can develop communications kind of tactics to make that sustainability report come alive in ways that be relevant and inspiring and compelling for your different stakeholders. So for instance, if talent, you can think of a LinkedIn strategy to get that story it's simplified with kind of infographics, so people who work for your organization and also your partners can understand and appreciate that as part of your social media or LinkedIn strategy. Or you can take it out to events or kind of road shows, if that's part of your kind of way to drive partnerships and suppliers, and it can be incorporated in how you go to market in that respect. So as I said, the key word for me is integrating it, making it relevant to those different stakeholders so they can understand and appreciate the hard work and progress you're making on these issues.
Andy, I like how you actually segue from the fireside chat to the question to the Q&A question. So it's pretty cool. And back down to the questions, since we only have about like 10 minutes left. We've got a few questions to answer here. I think one I would like to throw to Laura, and I think the question here is about, will the course require participants to complete a project like a capstone project?
Yeah, thank you. So Karen, thank you for your questions. So we're going to be, as we mentioned, the idea is that when you finish the course, you can go away and actually implement these practices within your organization. So what we'll be sharing is an implementation plan. There's not going to be like necessarily a project, but there will be an implementation plan that we'll sort of introduce early on in the course, and that you'll kind of have to take away with you and actually be able to use within your business. So it's going to be a very practical framework.
Exactly. And I think to add on to Laura as well, to the implementation plan will be a follow-up as well. So we will try to identify what are the issues, and also how is the plan likely to be implemented by the company as well. So there will be a bit of a follow-up on the part of AMS. So thank you for
I've got no doubt that part of the implementation will include a potential project that you can then take to and sell into your organization.
Agree, ideally. Otherwise, it'll be greenwashing. But no, seriously, jokes aside, one question over here is that, is there a sustainability advertising standard to adhere to by Rachel?
Yes, there's CCAP that is in play at the moment. The thing to understand is that these standards are always evolving, and what we're going to be doing is helping helping everyone to understand the principles that are behind the standard. So actually, you don't have to rely on compliance to the standard to stay safe, as it were, and to manage risk. That you can actually, by understanding the principles behind confident and responsible communications, you will be able to communicate in ways that will even prevent you having to kind of worry about those standards. Of course, the standards are really critical that you've got to kind of tick box and comply with, but we're going to help give you the tools to go kind of deeper and beyond the standard of the day.
And just to add to what Andy mentioned, I think that from a local point of view, there is the authorities, the Advertising Standards Authority of Singapore, ASAS. And I believe they have something called the Singapore Code of Advertising Practice, SCAP. Yeah. And that is due for an update, which we understand that an update will be coming either end of the year or sometime early next year. And that will include issues or guidelines when it comes to sustainability marketing. Yeah. So something to look out for as well.
And we'll share as well case studies. I think, we have a great example from last year of actually an ad that was deemed to sort of actually be non-acceptable by the ASAS due to kind of this kind of exaggeration and typical like greenwashing messages. So we'll kind of share some examples as well. So, in lieu of this sort of new regulation coming out, you'll still at least feel like where the kind of I guess the borders are in terms of how you can communicate and make sure that you're definitely not sort of greenwashing or being even accused of that.
Just one last question before we end today's session. Would a sustainability officer lead the communications, or would he or she defer to the marketing team?
Yeah, that was the point. That was a question. It's a great question, Karen. Thank you, and thank you for your interest. I think, as I was alluding to earlier, this will be a classic case of a collaboration. Typically, the sustainability officer kind of owns the product, and I'm putting that in air quotes. The sustainability progress, the report, the achievements, and we'll be all over that from a technical point of view. and then working with the marketing team to kind of work out, well, first of all, which stakeholders might we want to take this to, and therefore through what channels, and how should we kind of evolve the messaging as appropriate. The marketing and communications team should really have that expertise to bring to bear, and the sustainability officer will obviously have the expertise as to the actual sustainability kind of technicalities and outcomes and progress. So it's ideally a shared thing. I can imagine, Laura, you were operating both in your role as both the marketing person and a sustainability officer.
Laura, would you like to share a little bit more about that before we close off? As in, for a person like yourself holding a dual role of marketing and sustainability.
Yeah, of course. And I think it kind of sort of maybe will answer Karen's question as well around, should she attend because she's a business owner, not necessarily a sustainability officer. I mean, I've seen examples in organizations of sort of different successes in sustainability, those that have, a standalone sustainability officer, and those who maybe have people who are quite senior in the organization and influential, but they also lead sustainability. And I think there's definitely kind of pros and cons for both, depending on where the influence sits within your organization, and actually we will also talk about that in the course, kind of how can you influence people to kind of make those changes. So for me, it worked really well because I think I was senior enough in the organization to be able to drive change quite easily. I was able to make decisions myself. I was given full autonomy, and in marketing, I had the budget. So it was very easy for me to implement. Now, my counterpart in another market in Hong Kong was the ops director, operations. And again, it was very critical to the organization, but he didn't have any budget, and it was actually harder for him to make things happen. So I think it really depends on the organization. But I would love to just kind of answer Karen's question as well. Should she attend? And say yes, absolutely, because many organizations don't have a sustainability officer, and it's quite hard to find this sort of perfect person that can do sustainability because, again, there's different nuances with the role, there's different needs. But as the business owner, the fact that you will be given these tools and these frameworks, I think it's actually you have the most influential role because it is your company and it is your business to drive this change. And it means whenever new people come in, you can give them those tools and those frameworks to also follow, and be confident that your strategy and your marketing, and sustainability strategy is all aligned and it's all sort of in one place, so that you will be more likely to succeed because there's less of this sort of conflict against kind of what your end business goal is. So I actually think for all kind of small business owners, and it doesn't really matter the size, I think to join this course is so critical to make sure that your sustainability strategy is actually going to succeed, and it's going to both benefit your customer, your product, the planet, the people, but actually your bottom line, which we know a lot of businesses, you're there to make money. So how can you make sure that your strategy is in line with that ultimate goal of kind of profitability and business?
Thank you, Laura. And Andy and Laura, thank you so much. We have it's almost 11 and it's just nice. I think we covered quite a fair bit. And I'm sure the attendees will find all your sharing really, really useful, so much so that I think there'll be this huge FOMO to want to attend the program. So again, I would say thank you so much. But before we end off, there's a survey that they need to fill.
Yes, thank you, Nick. And again, this is a great build on what Laura was just talking about, and it goes to your question, Karen, that no organization is coming at this at the same level of size, scale, urgency, and kind of resources to cope with it. And it's so important to understand the journey that organizations are taking along this the transition. So this survey is something that we've developed with the ESG Institute that helps organizations kind of understand and can plot where they are on that journey. And we'll be sharing with you the key profiles. There are 4 different profiles that really characterize the 4 different phases that organizations have along this journey. And once you understand that, then you've got real good clarity as to what you need to do and what the role of marketing can or should be. So it would be great if you can all complete this survey. It takes less than 10 minutes. It's completely anonymous. And it will help the final report that will be out later in the year. And obviously, I'll be giving a sneak preview of that in the course come next month.
Awesome.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, for sharing. Laura as well. And it's all you can see and hear. Andy and Laura, they're all very passionate about sustainable marketing. They live and breathe it as well. I think you can see it from the whole mannerism and the behavior as well. So we really do look forward to seeing all of you attending the program. If you can't attend the program, do share with your friends and family members as well, especially those who are in companies or in a role that may eventually lead towards a sustainable marketing role. Please do share this program with them. So with that, I would say thank you so much. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Andy. And thank you everyone for taking part in today's webinar. Take care and have a good week ahead.